empresas andaluzas, bienvenidas a Canadá. Muchísimas gracias por participar en este webinario en donde queremos darles un hermoso panorama de las oportunidades para el sector Agritech. Me presento, mi nombre es Carolina Herrera, yo soy la directora de la oficina, estoy físicamente en Montreal y junto con mi colega Ushia Vázquez, que está físicamente en Toronto, somos la oficina de Canadá. Entonces, sin esperar más, le voy a dar la palabra a nuestros participantes que se van a presentar ellos mismos. Vamos a empezar con Michael. From now on, the webinar is going to be in English. So, Michael, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Carolina. I'm going to share my screen from the beginning. There we go. Buenos días, todo el mundo. Habla poquito español. So I'm going to speak in English. My name is Mike McGee. I'm based in Calgary, Alberta, which is in Western Canada. My history is as a investor, both in the investment banking and early stage businesses. But prior to joining BioEnterprise about 3 years ago, I was a general partner in a fund by the name of Avrio Capital, which was focused on investing in agriculture and food technologies across Canada and into the United States. Special thank you this morning to Extenda for having the opportunity to present BioEnterprise and discuss Canadian agriculture with you folks. BioEnterprise is Canada's national food and agritech accelerator. We're Canada's go-to organization for commercialization and adoption and growth. We're a not-for-profit organization established in 2003, funded by the government of Canada and provincial governments, as well as the private sector. We have offices in 6 provinces, 7 regions, and have over the last 20 years worked with over 2,500 innovative Canadian companies. Our raison d'etre, our mission, is to foster collaboration and connectivity across the Canadian food and agritech industry. We look to build efficiencies and increase innovation capacity in the sector to bring new innovations and technologies to the market. We like to try and streamline commercialization and scale up by helping companies connect, innovate, and grow, which, as you can see, is our mantra. We have a staff of about 16. Located in Guelph, Ontario, which is where Emily is based. We have a network of innovation advisors across Canada with industry-specific knowledge ranging everything from row crops to vegetables to animal husbandry. We have an advisory committee helping us in terms of determining priorities. And we couldn't do this without our network of partners across the country that are committed to providing sector-specific services that will accelerate the growth of small business across Canada. These include the names you see on your screen, but also academic institutions across Canada, like the University of Guelph, University of Montreal, University of Alberta, as well as accelerators and incubators, including Thrive, amongst others. And of course, we feel it's very important to enhance collaboration across the country to accelerate the likelihood of successful commercialization of ag tech and food tech companies.
Michael, if I can interrupt you for a
Yep.
second, so sorry,
Sure.
we cannot see your presentation.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Let me just escape, share content. We'll try that again. Bear with me. We did this in a trial run and it worked just fine. Stop sharing.
Now we can
How,
see your, oh no, you were fine. We were seeing your PowerPoint.
you were seeing it? Okay.
Oh
So
yeah.
now you're seeing the PowerPoint?
Now we're seeing you.
Okay. How about this?
There you go.
So you can see the presentation now? Okay, well, I'm gonna have
Yes.
to move it over onto the screen so I can see it.
Okay, but now we can see all of your computer.
Well, that's not good. Best laid plans of mice and men. PowerPoint. Now you can still see all of my computer, I'm presuming. I don't know what
And
we've
now we
done.
can see your PowerPoint.
Okay, so we'll do that, and I'll just have to glance on the screen on the right as I chat. Sorry about that. Um, so you can see a list of our partners. Again, without whose support we wouldn't be able to achieve the goals that we have been successful in doing so. Just a little bit of background intro into Canada, because I'm not sure what you might be familiar with or not. We're a country of 38 million people spread out in 10 provinces and 3 territories. The 2 largest provinces, which we have representation here today from Guillaume and Emily, are Ontario with 14 million people and Quebec with 8.5 million people. The prairies, which Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba make up, is about 7.2 million. Canada is the second largest country in the world from a landmass perspective with 9.9 million square kilometers, which of course is 20 times the size of Spain, albeit 90% of the Canadian population lives within 100 miles of the U.S. border, which is the 49th parallel, because clearly as you grow north, the soil quality and the temperatures do not lend themselves well to agriculture. Our natural trade routes are north and south. Which essentially means the bulk of our trade is with the United States. The landscape for agriculture and innovation in Canada is very critical to the Canadian economy. About 560,000 Canadians are employed in agriculture directly. The entire agri-food system accounts for 7.4% of Canada's GDP, which is somewhat similar to Andalusia, as I understand, yet it represents 16% of our exports. And as I mentioned, most of those exports, about 80% of the United States. Our next largest trading partner is Japan at 11%, followed by China at 10%. Canada is the 5th largest agricultural exporter globally. Western Canada has 90% of the country's arable farmland and is known principally for cultivating crops such as canola, pulses, wheat, barley, as well as livestock. Canada is the world's largest exporter of canola, pulses, and blueberries. Fresh mushrooms, we're 4th in the world, pork 5th, and on the beef side, we're the 6th largest exporter in the world. We're known globally in Western Canada for players like Nutrien with $27 billion in revenue. Viterra, whose roots are in Canada, has about $7.3 billion in revenue from Canada. Richardson's International, AGT, and TELUS Ag, amongst others. Uh, the Canadians are well aware there is a global need for more efficient agricultural innovation. And I'm sure you've all heard these following facts. And the reason being is we're going to have 9.5 billion people on the planet by 2050. So we need to increase food production by an estimated 60%. We recognize that agriculture accounts for 25 to 30% of the world's greenhouse gases. And we need to reduce that. Agriculture also accounts for the use of about 70% of the world's fresh water globally. And essentially, in order to tackle climate change, Canadians and the Canadian government alike recognize that agriculture has to play a role in that. The other element that most Canadians understand is that from farm to fork, approximately 40% of food is wasted. So anything we can do to obviously reduce the waste of food can potentially feed more Canadians and folks globally. Back in 2022, the Canadian government introduced a supercluster initiative, having identified agriculture as an area where we could significantly increase our imports, or rather our exports. And of the 5 areas they selected, 2 of the critical ones for agriculture are Protein Industries Canada, which is basically based in Western Canada, which is focused on the production of more lentils for plant-based protein, and the Ocean Supercluster based in Eastern Canada, which is focused on the production of more aquaculture. The other elements that are really important to understand about Canada is we have a significant amount of non-dilutive government funding for research and commercialization from both provincial organizations as well as federal organizations across the country. Um, the government of Canada specifically is looking to reduce the application of nitrogen by 30%. So any technologies which enhance that target are of great interest to Canadians alike. And of course, much like many other jurisdictions across the country, carbon taxes are being increased in order to drive reduced emissions. As far as key trends impacting the sector and technologies of interest, clearly from a consumer preference perspective, consumers want clean labels. They're not particularly interested in GMO, albeit their views are changing a little with respect to gene editing, CRISPR-Cas9 type technologies. There is a preference for organic, more plant protein, and better for you products. From a local production perspective, much like I'm sure you experienced in Spain, supply chain was an issue. So there's a focus on supply chain resilience, which is leading to more greenhouse and controlled environment ag. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, as well as recognizing that products that aren't shipped long distances have a higher nutrient density. Lower environmental footprint is of course key, which is to be achieved via sustainable, or what is more commonly known as regenerative ag. A few of the technologies of interest, and this list is by no means comprehensive, is a focus on soil health, improving the microbiome, the use of more biologicals versus traditional ag chems to reduce runoff, and obviously other harmful effects of chems in soil and in water streams, the use of cover crops, the use of more crop rotation, and enhanced no-till or low-till, particularly in Western Canada. I mentioned controlled environment ag, and whether that's vertical farming or greenhouses, again, improvements in technologies for efficiencies, LED lighting, substrates, hydroponics, etc., particularly given Canada's outdoor growing season for our fruits and vegetables, most of which come from the Salinas Valley in California and Mexico, is deemed a priority. As far as other technologies, farm automation, precision planting, robotics, particularly given the aging farm population and the shortage of farm workers in Canada, and precision agriculture. From a food perspective, there's a real focus on nutritional ingredients, extending shelf life to reduce the food waste that I mentioned, biodegradable packaging, and others. So hopefully that's given you a good idea of sort of the Canadian overview, a little bit about Western Canada, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues to talk about Ontario and Quebec. And thank you again for the opportunity to present. My particulars are on the screen, so if any of you want to reach out in the future, please feel free to do so. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mike. That was an amazing way to start the webinar. Very dynamic, very full of information, very interesting information. So in this webinar, we're going to move west to east. So this is my opportunity to give the floor to Emily.
Thanks, Carolina. Just wanted to make sure my presentation is working. It looks like it's loading. Can someone let me know if you can see it? Perfect. Okay, well, thanks, Mike, for that great overview of Canada and emphasis on Western Ontario or Western Canada. I'm going to focus a little bit more on Ontario, but I also just wanted to give a general snapshot of some of the research activities that are taking place within the Canadian agriculture industry right now. And I'll get to that in a moment of why that's of importance to me. But just a brief summary of my presentation. I'll introduce myself, my organization that I represent, and then go into a bit of a snapshot of the sectors that are important to Ontario. But then also talk a little bit about some of the research activities that MyTax has supported, and why there is that importance of bridging the gap between academic research, so research coming out of universities and colleges across the country, and industry partners, whether they're based in Canada or based internationally. My name is Emily Gordon. I was actually born in Eastern Canada, and I've moved west when I was a teenager. And so I live in Ontario, and I'll explain a little bit about Ontario and perhaps why it's a bit of a unique place. But the organization I represent is called MyTax. We are a national independent not-for-profit funding organization. And our goal is to really empower Canadian innovation through our partnerships that we develop. We aim to be a catalyzing force in the Canadian innovation ecosystem through building world-class, diverse communities of innovators through our collaborative model that helps to attract, talent to Canada, helps to enhance training of our innovators, and combine, expertise to really help progress Canadian innovation. So our role is to really power research and development by connecting our industry partners, whether they're domestic companies or international companies, with the best post-secondary institutions to solve some of your research, innovation, and business challenges. And through this, we provide funding to support the next generation of innovators. So these are typically students at institutions, graduate students, postdocs, you name it. And one thing that is quite clear is that international engagement is necessary in order to advance Canadian innovation, and this is true across all sectors, not just the ag sector. So the way that we work is we will meet with companies, get a sense of what kind of expertise they're looking for to help with a product, a process, a service within their company. Maybe it's talent planning, maybe it's capacity building, access to resources. And then we match you with academic expertise. So they're really focused on research output, publication, knowledge mobilization, developing skills for their students. And then from there, we can help develop a bit of a training program, a training talent pipeline. And this is true not just for Canadian institutions. We can also bring, talented individuals that are international students into Canada and fund them as well, which is quite unique for some of the funding programs that do exist, which are more geared towards domestic students. And that's really because Canada recognizes that we do need to continue to attract talent to our country in order to solve some of our innovative challenges. Now, shifting a little bit into some of the agriculture and agri-food based projects that we've funded. MyTax has been around for over 20 years, but I just wanted to give a bit of a snapshot of over the last 5 years. So since 2017, MyTax has dedicated over $50 million towards research projects based in Canada across the country. You can see here on the distribution, we really span coast to coast in terms of the types of projects we support, particularly within the agriculture and agri-food sector. And I think it really just speaks to the importance of this sector as it pertains to research output across all, universities across all provinces for the most part. And it really speaks to the diversity of the types of projects that can be funded. An interesting statistic is when we break down where the students or the interns are from, more than 50% are actually foreign. So again, really speaks to our ability to attract international students to Canada to further their, academic research careers. I think Mike kind of demonstrated the size and scale of Canada in terms of, our diverse nature of our agri-food sector. My tax itself is national in scope. We are funded by both the federal government and provincial governments. And you can really see that in terms of the universities that are globally recognized for agriculture programs, it does span coast to coast. So all the way from British Columbia over here in Western Canada to Dalhousie University based in Nova Scotia. They all have really well-known agriculture, agri-food, programs within their institution, and it really just speaks to the importance of the sector. Now, focusing in here just a little bit of Ontario, where I currently live. Ontario is the darker orange province here. Interestingly, Ontario is double the size of Spain. We are a province, obviously you're a country, but for every one person living in Ontario, there's about 3.5 living in Spain. So Ontario is very spread out, similar to the rest of the country. And when you hear about Canadian or Ontario like agriculture, for the most part, it's happening in southern Ontario, which is the blue highlighted section here. So as far as our agriculture and fertile soil, the majority of it is in southern Ontario. But yeah, just an interesting demonstration there comparing to Spain. In terms of some of the crops, I don't want to go into too much detail of all of the different agriculture outputs within Ontario. We do have a fairly diverse output, but as far as crop field crops and work that's being done within that space, just wanted to highlight some of the major crops that we grow here in Ontario, which are soybeans, corn for grain, and winter wheat. We also have alfalfa mixtures, and other kind of making up the rest. Ontario is well known for our soybean production, particularly with food grade soy. And so that would be soy that's used for tofu, which is, I think becoming more of a common type of food globally, especially when individuals are starting to switch to a plant-based diet. So certainly a lot of work going into soybean development for food grade export as well as domestic. And so how are Canadian researchers contributing to this area of work within Canada? First and foremost, new trait and variety development. Something that's ongoing across many provinces is the public breeding programs based at institutions. Ontario, looking specifically at the University of Guelph, strong breeding programs across a multitude of crops, and it's all very unique to the geography that we're living in. And so you'll see more canola-based research happening in Western Canada, and then in Ontario, you see more wheat, corn, and soy research. Just kind of piggybacking off of some of the trends that Mike mentioned, digital farming monitoring tools, those are huge, and continuing to gain interest from small scale farmers all the way to large commercial operations. We see this particularly in Western Canada, where you do have those larger scale operations. Crop nutrition, I'll give you an example of that momentarily. Crop protection, Mike mentioned some of the challenges that Canada faces, and probably globally, with crop protection. And so what kind of new developments can be put out into the market to help reduce some of the negative impacts of crop protection within the agriculture system. And then, of course, high throughput screening. So this, really lends itself to the type of research activities that take place, whether it's high throughput screening of like plant materials, soil analyses, what have you. There is certainly work being done to develop these systems. And so I mentioned I would give just a quick example of one of the projects that MyTax has funded recently. And so this was a challenge that was really brought on by, recognizing that chemical fertilizer reliance is expensive inefficient, and potentially unsustainable. Mike mentioned that Canada is looking to reduce nitrogen inputs within the agriculture system. And so a company based at the University of Guelph, which was started by the late Dr. Paliath and Sean Thompson, involved developing a nanopect technology. It was derived from sour cherries, which are grown locally in Ontario and in Michigan region. And the technology system itself used the byproducts from the sour cherries to develop a delivery system that transports bioactive molecules. And so the result and the outcome of this collaboration was to create a more efficient, bioavailable, and sustainable fertilizer delivery system that can be applied to several different types of field crops. And then from there, looking at how they can take this technology and pivot it and apply it to other sectors, including pharmaceutical, food and beverage, gene therapy, and animal nutrition. So that was a collaboration with an Ontario-based company and the University of Guelph. Another important sector within Ontario is our dairy and poultry sector. So Canada has a bit of a unique dairy, poultry, and egg sector in that we do rely on supply management, and it's designed to meet domestic demands. One thing that Canada is known for is our superior dairy and beef genetics. And when you're looking at some of the priorities from the governing associations, the Dairy Farmers of Canada has released research priorities that fall under dairy farm sustainability, animal health, care and welfare, and dairy and human nutrition and health. Similarly, poultry science has released the following research priorities, which include antimicrobial stewardship, poultry health and welfare, food safety, and sustainability. So probably similar across multiple countries in terms of the priority areas that our governing bodies are looking for. And so how are Canadian researchers contributing to the dairy sector, the poultry sector? A big one, and similar to within crop production, is animal genetics and breeding. I mentioned Canada is well known for our breeding programs as it pertains to dairy and beef. Animal health, of course, is a huge one, animal welfare, animal nutrition, and then, of course, environmental impact and sustainability. The dairy sector does produce or does have a significant impact on the environment. And so looking at tools and ways of innovating to be able to reduce some of that impact. And so an example I wanted to highlight here is on cattle genetics. And so one of the challenges that most organisms face is like fertility disorders within cattle, feed efficiency, and methane emission traits within the dairy sector. And so the approach for this was to work with a livestock geneticist at the University of Guelph, Dr. Bays, and a Canadian dairy producer organization. And so the solution for this was a large-scale academic-based livestock breeding program that combines, cutting-edge research with practical application for the sector. And opportunities that came from this example are being able to continuously adapt to changing environmental conditions. And as new diseases, new requirements come to play. So now I just wanted to quickly touch base on some interesting sectors that are a little bit more niche, but certainly I think those of you living in Spain can appreciate our greenhouse sector in Ontario. So Ontario is the leader in greenhouse production, which accounts for about 70% of the total production in Canada. And some key research areas within this space are artificial intelligence, robotics and automated harvesting, water use efficiency, and developing tools for more sustainable practices within greenhouse sector, as well as biosolutions. So these would be like biocontrol for pests that reside within the greenhouse. And so we have a few institutions in Ontario that are recognized for this, which are the University of Guelph, Niagara College, and the University of Windsor. Another interesting tidbit of information is Ontario actually has a grape growing region. Despite our climate, we actually have an interesting microclimate, if you will, that is actually quite similar to Burgundy, France. And so this climate actually is suitable for growing a variety of different grapes. And while our production is fairly small on a global level, it is a very popular sector in Canada because of the ecotourism, as well as being able to have local wines. And so we do have some institutions that do focus on this area of the industry, and some of the tools and technologies that are being developed within this sector include solar-powered weather monitoring systems that use wireless IoT for monitoring, geotextile blankets to cover the vines depending on the weather conditions. Our weather is a little bit volatile here. And then wind machines for movement of air. So when it gets a little bit too cold, having wind machines that can help keep the vines a bit warmer. Adapting and innovating harvest equipment and machinery. It is a very laborious operation, and so what ways can harvesting equipment and machinery play in reducing that amount of time? And then finally, developing varieties with cold hardiness and disease resistance traits is another big area of research. And so finally, just to summarize, in terms of this collaboration and types of opportunities between, for-profit companies, whether they're domestic or international, why should they collaborate with universities and colleges? Well, first and foremost, academic expertise. These are individuals who are doing this on a daily basis. They've perhaps been doing this for over, decades, and they do stay up to date on what's happening in the sector. So access to those expertise is extremely crucial if you are looking to innovate within a particular sector. Also, access to talent. Being trained in a fairly intensive institution, and then being able to take those expertise and those learnings back to your company is, one of the major roles that MyTax plays. And then, of course, funding. There's a lot of funding programs out there in Canada, but I'm sure internationally as well, that really help provide opportunities for when you do decide to collaborate with academic researchers. Resources and infrastructure, that's what we see a lot here in Canada is companies, maybe they're a startup company, but they need to access certain resources, technologies, large scale equipment that just wouldn't be feasible for them to access on their own. And so a lot of that can be covered when working with an institution. And then, of course, licensing opportunities. Whether this is, researchers who have developed a patent or a type of technology, the company wants to license it to help, with their own commercialization efforts. That's something that continues to grow in interest when collaborating with institutions. And so that's all from me. I will take any questions after we wrap up, but I'm going to hand it over to Guillaume in Quebec. And I just wanted to thank our funding partners, which are the provincial governments and our federal government. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Emily. I'm just going to intercept quickly before Guillaume to thank you. Thank you so much for the panorama you gave us about Ontario. Recordarles a nuestras empresas andaluzas que si tienen alguna pregunta, la pueden ir poniendo en el chat y no tiene que ser en inglés. La pueden poner en español y nosotros les ayudamos con la traducción. I was just saying that they can participate in the chat. Thank you, Emily. Guillaume, if you could do us the pleasure of your participation, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolina. Very appreciated. Soy Guillermo, estoy de Quebec y trabajo por la empresa Zone Agritech. Es un placer de estar aquí con vosotros. Si tienen preguntas, no hay problema. Podían preguntarme. I'm just going to share my presentation. So there you go. I see that we still have 20 minutes to go. I'm a fast talker, so if there's something wrong, you can stop me. So I'm doing direct investment from Zone Agritech. We're a nonprofit organization. I'll come back a little bit later on who we are. We're based in the suburb of Montreal. And you've met one of my colleagues, Mike Mannion at BioEnterprise. Mike is an absolute mastermind in terms of knowledge of what's going on in the country. So I do invite you guys to reach out to Mike if you're looking for some stuff in Canada, or to me. But I really appreciate working with him. I studied at Laval University in Quebec City, in Montreal as well. And I decided to put that slide because I've spent 6 years in Brussels working for Up Brussels, the economic agency. I've worked with several Spanish colleagues, and I'm very familiar with all the European programs available to create links. So National Contact Point, Enterprise Europe Network. And I just want to say that Canada has a reciprocity treaty with Europe to join those kind of projects. I know there's lots going on in Spain. So if you're looking for North American partners, we're always up for it. Other than that, I used to be an entrepreneur in virtual reality. I was a VC director in Wallonia in tech. I helped some of my friends launching milk in glass bottle, organic milk in Quebec. And I ended up working at Zone Agritech and BioEnterprise, which I am really happy. I'll stop there. I'm more focusing on Quebec for this presentation. I've decided to go from farm to fork on my side. So I just want to say that for food processing, Quebec is the second engine of Canada. You'll see that there's lots of similarity of what's going on in agriculture between Ontario and Quebec. We got a huge frontier, and our climate and ecosystem is very similar. We're the first processor. We have the first processing capacity in Canada in terms of milk, pork, maple, which is quite normal or easy to understand, but as well in chocolate and cocoa, because we succeeded to attract several big players as Barrique Lebeau, the Belgian and the Swiss joint venture, as well as Hershey and several other. Mike was talking about the fact that the Canadian are looking for more organic production and everything. And in Quebec, it's also the same. So we're the first in terms of certified organic farms. Basically, the manufacturing industry in Quebec is our first industry with more than 2,700 companies and 84,000 jobs created. You probably ask yourself where all this food goes. Some of it goes in Quebec and the rest of Canada, but when you look south, we have a big market, which is the United States. We're less than 8 hours drive from the urban area of New York, and all the warehouses that feeds this area are located on the north side of this urban block. So very accessible from Quebec, and we're capitalizing on that. I like to show people a little bit like who are our main players. So dairy industry, very well present. We got some French players like Groupe Bell, for example, but as well local player like Saputo. And we got the biggest cooperative who has been initiated in Quebec, Agropur, that is now across North America. In terms of beverage as well, so beer, Coca-Cola, a couple of big names. Food processing, you see as well. So Kraft, Kerry, Bonduel, but some local players as La Sonde. And I want to attract your attention on Ocean Spray and Fruits d'Or, who are leaders into cranberries food processing. So Quebec is a leader in cranberries production. As well, so bakery, pastries, flour, grain, meat, seafood, and I was talking about chocolate. So Hershey, Barrique Lebeau, and Lantic, the sugar food processing company, who is based in Montreal. It's a big employer for us. In terms of agriculture and agtech, I'll start with the right side. We got more or less 900 greenhouses in production in Quebec, close to 3,000 farms, fruits and vegetables. We got crop for cash and fodder, around 7,000 farms. You see that animals is basically the core of our business with almost 12,500 farms. Fisheries and aquaculture is something that we're looking intensively in. We want to rebuild our land-based aquaculture capacity in Quebec, especially in salmonids, trouts, as well as shrimp. So if you know any companies who are looking to expand, we might have some nice stuff to offer to them. And there's about 15,000 stores and distributors across our territory. And we're in touch with the main distributors and grocery stores on our territory as well. In terms of Agtech, then you see how our company are distributed. We resense more or less 220 companies that goes from research to pre-market to making money. And it ranges from bioproduct, biotech, precision agro-robotics, control environment, agriculture, new types of food, and clean tech. At Zone Agtech, we federate more or less 125 of them, and we know the rest of them as well. So if you're looking for granularity in this information, we can provide it quite easily. Again, in terms of ag ecosystem, we got some big players on our territory. I would start with Groupe Souci, who provide the tracks and tractor wheel for pretty much like all the main big manufacturers on the planet. But as well, we got Cascade in packaging, we got Arnaud in greenhouses, Timac Agro, so the French group was here under William Hood. They employ over 60,000 people across the world. We got universities and a research center. I think that Emily did a good job going over them. And we have as well some high potential startups with who we're working right now, including Solom, who are making a light technologies for greenhouses that is even taking market share right now in on the Dutch market. And why would we consider Quebec as a market for expansion? So the first thing, and that has been the bread and butter of my job, we offer the cheapest electricity rate in North America at 5.33 cents Canadian cents kilowatt per hour. And the Ministry of Agriculture is also providing a subsidy of 40% when it's used to grow food. So we're close to 3 cents per kilowatt per hour. So we're the cheapest in North America. And with our accessibility to the New York market, as I was saying, this is quite a heavy value proposition for a company who wants to expand. 99.6% is renewable electricity. So basically, we're using dam and hydroelectricity on our side. The remaining 0.4% are just agreement with other provinces on our borders. It's just cheaper than bringing all the infrastructure and electricity there. We got abundant fresh water. We talked about a little bit about the price of our people. Actually, we made some calculation, and it came that for high-skilled workers, so engineer, like computer, mechanical, electric, we're about the third of the price of the US in terms of salaries when taken in account the currency exchange, and as well in Quebec has very generous subsidies to create high-skilled jobs in the province. And the talent is quite available compared to some parts of the US. We don't have big employers like Facebook, Google, or Amazon who are draining the talents. So there's still possibility of recruiting, and plus we're the birthplace of artificial intelligence. So for the one who doesn't know, there is a guy called Yoshua Bengio who was a researcher at Montreal University, and he was making some fundamental research and turned out to find the Grail of AI as we know it today. He decided to give to the community in Montreal, and he created the Myla, which is a laboratory co-working space downtown Montreal, and that's where it works with all his collaborators, and that's a very vibrant place to find talents and try to dig in this AI ecosystem in Montreal. And just overall, Montreal is just a cool place to live. Where lots of university, they call it the fun city, lots of festival. We got quite a good reputation on that side. I'll jump to what Zone Agtech is. So at first, we're a 414 million economic development project. We create the cradle of Agtech in Quebec. So we're a community, but we're as well a real estate project on 15 kilometers square. If I start with the community about who we are, and I was talking about the granularity of the agtech players in our community. So we got 125 members of companies that develop technologies. It ranged from new types of agriculture input, so fertilizers, but all the ides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, and so on. Valorization of agricultural output, precision ag, robotics, control environment agriculture, genomics, aquaculture as well. Some of those fields has been presented by Emily, so I don't want to extend myself too much on this. But we're also we've organized all the funding partners that help fund the industry, the R&D partners as well on the bottom right inside of the pie. And we're one of the rare organizations that I know of that do foreign direct investment attraction and accept to do business development for the companies that require services, but under very precise circumstances. When we see that there's a real give and take, that the companies wants to come and invest in territory, hire people, then we're in touch with 15 of the main buyers in terms of fruits and vegetables. We're in touch with all the greenhouses, growers, the Farmers Association. So this is something that we're quite good at. And one of our founding members is BioEnterprise, and that's the link that we have. They help set Zone Agtech. So I'm the Quebec representative. Very happy to be part of this team as well. We're going to share the representation a little bit later with you. I just wanted to go over a little bit the real estate side and what it looks like. Images are always better than words. I got two links there. I've already opened them on my browser on the other side. So just to show you, so for people who never came, Montreal is the lower island right there. Laval is the north one. Both islands are sitting in the middle of the St. Lawrence River, and we are the county. So all those patch of lands are county. Bunch of municipalities getting together to manage their common responsibilities, including economic development. So Zone Agtech is this 15 kilometer square, including industrial land on each of his end and agricultural land in the middle. So and we help companies either to find ground, settle, test, take visibility. So for example, here in Repentigny, we're having vertical farming, we're having robotics, we're having fertilizers, genomics, greenhouses, they're coming in. And the main sites used to be this one in L'Assomption. And this used to be the Electrolux site. So it's a Swedish electro appliance company making dishwasher. They closed in 2014, 1,500 people were laid off. And to revitalize this site, then we created 2 million foot square of industrial land, where 70% of the building have greenhouses on the rooftop, including the biggest greenhouses in the world of 400,000 square foot. I mean, as we know, because there's probably something bigger in China. I can't believe there isn't. Still, here we're having a vertical underground farming, rooftop, robotics, aquaculture, insects farming. On this building there, it's shop, restaurants, kindergarten, offices, and lab, wet and dry. This is as well the building that is making office of the central meeting point for all the companies to make sure that there's a shared ideas and that companies meet each other. I guess I'll stop there about what we're doing in Quebec and what's our advantages and who we are. My email is at the last page of this presentation right there. So you can basically reach out to me, ask me any questions. And I'm someone who's like to chip in. So Capital Social, you reach out, I'll probably answer with everything that I know. And scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I guess that's just how life works. Thank you very much. Everyone, and Carolina.
All right, thank you, Guillaume. You are a fast talker, but you told us everything and then a little bit more. And, well, the presenters have told us a lot of things. Los presentadores nos han dicho muchísimas cosas. Si tienen alguna pregunta, queridas empresas andaluzas, por favor, para eso estamos. Si tienen alguna pregunta para nosotras, si tienen alguna pregunta para ellos, recordarles que cualquier pregunta se vale. No hay pregunta que sea muy alejada del tema o que sea muy específica. Por favor, para eso estamos. El desarrollo de las relaciones entre Canadá y Andalucía en el sector Agtech es muy incipiente, lo estamos construyendo. Nuestra idea es construirlo juntos. Entonces, por favor, cualquier tipo de pregunta lo pueden poner en el chat. Y por mientras que tal vez las van formulando o se van lanzando, I have a quick question for Mike. Mike, you mentioned the plant-based protein cluster in the aquaculture one in the East. Do you have a little bit more details on what they are doing?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in, and I know Emily and Guillaume can as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
I said Mike
yeah,
because you mentioned it, but if
yeah,
you guys
yeah,
have notions, that would
of
be
course.
amazing.
No, it was one of the superclusters identified. Obviously, Western Canada being the largest producers of lentils in the world. The reality is that we need to produce more, and so there's been significant investment in pea fractionation plants in Western Canada. I think there are 12 or 13. The idea being obviously to fractionate the peas to generate the protein to be added in consumer packaged goods to essentially attempt, I think, to some extent, to change the diet. I mean, the Canadian government has come out with a new dietary plan for Canadians, which introduced more consumption of vegetables and plant protein. And not suggesting that we stop eating beef or meat, but certainly be more aware of the health benefits of plant-based protein. So significant investment in that. And of course, no need to tell you what's going on in the industry today with respect to Impossible Foods and Beyond Meats. Share prices have dropped, and consumers still speak with their preferences from a taste perspective, right? Not getting the mouthfeel they want, not getting the taste that they want, but in the end, we all know that I think more traditional animal-based protein can work and live side by side plant-based protein, but I don't think animal-based protein is going to disappear as quickly as a lot of folks had anticipated it would.
All right. Guillaume Milly, since you might be familiar with the
The blue.
subject, would you like to?
So the blue cluster is in the east of Canada, including the Maritimes. So some of the provinces that are now represented of this panel, including Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Islands. And we have some good colleagues at Bioenterprise who are well implicated in this cluster, but that includes as well Quebec from on the very east end. They're very focused into algae, into as well making more sustainable the fisheries there. And they're looking for new technologies. I know that Spain has an extensive knowledge about this, so that could be very interesting. We have infrastructure as well in terms of R&D, in terms of co-manufacturing. We're talking about algae. We've seen algae appearing a lot for protein purposes or mix in foods and food matrix. But as well as fertilizers. So we see them coming quite massively. So that's super interesting for us. And as well as biofuels. So we're having a couple of players that we're helping in this field. But this is a very, very vibrant topic on the east side of Canada.
The only thing I would add, just with respect to the clusters and really the importance is, and I'm speaking more from an academic lens and collaborative lens rather than just specifically ag, but I think it really just speaks to the need to be able to collaborate across multiple geographies within the country. That's something that we frankly don't see enough when it comes to research projects that MyTags funds. Is they are very regionally focused. And so I think and hope that by having some of these clusters that Canada's identified as being priorities, it can help to bring together stakeholders from different regions, because at the end of the day, we're kind of facing similar issues across the whole country. And so if there's ways of working together on solutions, it can, I think mutually provide mutual benefits to multiple stakeholders.
I'd just like to add, I mean, Guillaume brought up a great point and was just at a conference where it was discussed in Western Canada. Biodigesters, right? Biofuels is very much in focus. And certainly as a country, we have some expertise in the fermentation world, more and more demand on the fermentation side for those ingredients, etc.
Okay, I see that Roberto is on the chat, so he might have a question. If not, I would like to ask also on a broader sense, because you speak a lot on the specifics on the sectors, but I would like to know if you can maybe explain on a broader sense, what would it be the main challenges that an international company may face when coming to Canada to take advantage of these opportunities? And also, if you have some examples of success stories that have happened in the sector.
I'll begin. Thank you, Ushia, for this question. So ultimately, it's to find the right partners. We found that our companies, well, like any business, they want to validate the market and try to see that there's really real business and money to be made. They're all companies, after all. So we've been helping the company, and at first we're not doing some business development or business validation, I may say, for the companies that are coming from abroad. It's a fine line for us because we don't want to favorize international companies and hinder our local companies. So it's always a matter of choosing what technologies and what's there on the market and how we help them. But this is something that we've seen that when we succeed, it's very valuable and companies decide to come and settle. Zone Agritech going to have a couple of big announcements to be made in about 2 months' time. But in vertical farming, with the price of electricity, we've been able to attract a couple of big players. As well, there's demand for a market, and from what we know, there's demand for mushrooms, strawberries, fish at the moment. I know that the great distribution would like to see more and be able to buy more local of them. So we're working on trying to attract them. But it all begins with the business validation. At the end, if we're talking about operational aspect, location, hiring people, I mean, the several organizations that cover the landscape of economic development have extensive knowledge and know how to help the companies in terms of immigration, creating companies when you're from abroad, finding a land, solving all the needs in terms of, I don't know, water, electricity, sewage, gas. I mean, this is easier than going through business validation.
Thanks.
I don't know if Emily or Michael want to add something to Guillaume's answer. If not, that's okay.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I think I'll pass. Let's pass it over to Mike.
No, I was just going to build on Guillaume's comments. I mean, I think Canada is very receptive to participation, collaboration globally. We're a trading nation. As I indicated, 80% of our exports in ag sector are to the US. And the reality is we've got great academic institutions. We've got students coming from all over the world to attend our universities. The regulatory environment can sometimes, and Emily could probably speak to that more, can sometimes be a little slow in terms of approval of technologies, working with some of our regulatory folks, but I think we're making improvement. And again, it's we're a country of immigrants, so we're very receptive to working with other cultures and sensitive to cultural difference.
Great.
Excellent, thank you very much. Queridas empresas andaluzas, ya aquí son las 11, estamos en el tiempo, pero siempre tenemos oportunidad de hacer una última pregunta. Vamos a ver si alguien se anima. Pueden escribirla, pueden decirla en el micrófono si quieren. Y si no, está todo bien. En las presentaciones que los presentadores nos han enviado están sus coordenadas y si el email está ahí es definitivamente para que lo usen. Entonces, No duden en escribirles a ellos, no duden en escribirnos a nosotros. La oficina está aquí para ayudarlos con cualquier cosa que necesiten para Canadá. Esto es un sector en el cual creemos mucho, el cual queremos desarrollar. Así que definitivamente, por favor, sigamos en contacto, quedamos a vuestra disposición y les voy a agradecer mucho. I'm going to thank our participants so much for being here with us, for being so involved, for giving us all this information that is super useful for us. Really, thank you. Muchas gracias.
Tenemos una última pregunta de Roberto. No sé si hay tiempo.
Pero claro que sí.
Okay.
I
So we have,
just read, sorry,
yeah,
go ahead. I just read Roberto was going to be in the US, and I
perfect.
would say I'm sure that depending on where he lands in Canada, whether it's Quebec or in Ontario, Emily and Guillaume can introduce him to all the right folks, and obviously that's where relationships start, right? It's that face-to-face meeting and an understanding of sort of each other's businesses and how you can collaborate to move respectively ahead.
Totally
Sorry,
agree,
Alexia.
and feel free to add us on LinkedIn.
I see that he's still writing. You want to visit Canada? By all means, por favor. We can definitely help you with that. Oh, thank you, Roberto. Thank you for participating. All
Thank
right,
you,
I see
Shia
that
and
Miguel.
Carolina, for this
Yeah.
organization.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
so
you all.
much.
welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
Thank
very
you for your
welcome.
time, for the presentations. It was really insightful and great to have you on.
Yes, and hopefully this is the beginning of a big development of the aggregate sector between Canada and Andalusia.
Super.
Have a great day.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Hasta luego.
Bye.